Альварес сейчас очень-очень близко. Замедля совершенно.
Und nochmal an die rechte und da ist es passiert! Das ist das Karriere, der womöglich zu Ende geht. Und Alvarez macht es! Und jetzt ist es vorbei! Leider Alvarez schlägt Sergey Kovalev und ist Weltmeister!
Absolutely tremendous when 6 rounds of Katie Taylor was shown to see tonight. That was the plan, but best laid plans don't always result.
Welcome to the motherfucking replay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Just to announce that I've decided to part from CYCLONE Promotions and the McGuigans. Basically, I don't know where my boxing career is heading now because it's going for legal action, so I'm restricted in what I can actually say. But basically, I thought I was going to be leaving amicable as we had a meeting and they know the distress they caused me and how emotional they made me feel in my whole career by deliberately making me feel isolated, humiliated and just deflated. And they had no time for a female boxer. I was supposed to be training 5 times a week. I never trained 5 times a week. I done all my training in Northampton. I was in London training 3 times a week. My last fight was 4-week camp, and a lot of people noticed that my performance was terrible, not up to scratch how I usually would perform. And that's one of the reasons is the stress I've been going through in that team, chasing money.
Some very disappointing news regarding the highly touted lightweight prospect Chantelle Cameron, who seems to have parted ways unamicably from CYCLONE Promotions and the McGuigan Gym. And I'll tell you that this is very disappointing because Chantelle Cameron, at this stage in her career, as early as it is, because it really just started, but at this early stage, she was already exhibiting elite level quality. So for her to be experiencing promotional issues this early in her career, you can see how that might stifle her development. And the only hope now is that someone who's got their foot in the door of women's boxing will come in, swoop her up,
sign her to a deal,
and sign her to some kind of deal. I see areas of opportunity out there. Women's boxing today is in a much better place than it's ever been in previous years. Thus, the area of opportunity is there. Remember, just days ago it was announced that Lou DiBella Entertainment has expanded on his roster of female fighters by signing Costa Rican world champion Hannah Gabriels. And what I'm hoping is that someone like a Lou DiBella, someone like an Eddie Hearn, who's got all the fighters that he's been signing to Matchroom USA and DAZN, that platform offers a great opportunity to just about any fighter that really wants to make a name for themselves, because on that platform, they'd be fighting in the same place, in the same space as a Canelo Alvarez, as an Anthony Joshua, as a Daniel Miracle Man Jacobs, as a WBO champion Demetrius Andrade, as a unified lightweight champion Katie Taylor. You understand? The area of opportunity is there. The only potential hindrance, the only potential hiccup is that Chantelle Cameron herself cited legal issues, that they are engulfed right now in some kind of a legal battle. Thus, she can't even divulge certain details as to why they parted ways. But she did imply that she felt alienated, that she felt like she was being put on the back burner, that her as a female fighter was not being prioritized, that these guys didn't have time for her. This is a part of the reason that so many female fighters that are out there command my respect. You have to realize that these girls out there that are putting all this time in the gym, working on their craft, doing their road work, doing their drills, what have you, all these different girls that are out there that are doing this, they're not even being given the same cash incentives as the guys are. They're not being given the same kind of treatment. They're not being treated like priorities in all the same ways that the guys are. Thus, whatever they're doing makes this a labor of love more than anything else. That there are other more secure professions out there that offer a bit more stability than this, and yet this is what they choose. And it's for this reason that so many fighters like Chantelle Cameron, so many female fighters like Chantelle Cameron, really command my respect. So the only hope now, what I'm hoping for, is that perhaps Eddie Hearn, or someone like Eddie Hearn, or Lou DiBella, maybe Bob Arum, who could use a lightweight pony in the show. I mean, he's doing an amazing job. You know, Top Rank is doing an amazing job with Michaela Mayer. And since going pro and having a couple of fights, she's moved down from the lightweight division. She's campaigning in the division below that. So maybe Top Rank or somebody over there could step in, pick up Chantelle Cameron, get her on that bring-along process that they've got Michaela Mayer on, in what could develop into being a very big fight across the Atlantic between Chantelle Cameron and Katie Taylor. Maybe they want to have a pony in that show. Or maybe Eddie Hearn wants to pick up another great lightweight contender. My point is, there are already people out there that have invested in the sport of women's boxing, and they're doing a great job. The job that I guess Cyclone Promotions and the people at the McGuigan Gym, the job that they don't want to do anymore. Well, there are other people out there that might want that job, so I can only hope now that the career of Chantelle Cameron is not stifled for too long by this setback, that someone will step in, pick her up, and in the process, let her pick up where she left off. I reiterate, women's boxing today is in a better place than it was yesterday. But there's still more progress to make. There's still more that needs to be done. Because when a talented fighter like Chantelle Cameron gets relegated to being in the back burner, in spite of how talented she is, in spite of what she's already shown, when a fighter like that can end up on the back burner, that's a sign that, you know what, there's still more work needs doing. And I'm just hoping that one of these other bigger outfits than Cyclone Promotions is willing to do the work. Because Chantelle Cameron is a talented fighter that's very marketable. And this is a fighter that can have a bright future, but somebody's got to invest in her for that to happen. And other news regarding just who exactly is Anthony Joshua going to be fighting next and where is it going to take place. Eddie Hearn has admitted that April 13th at Wembley is looking very unlikely, and it being that Dylan White actually wants more time for a fight like that, Hearn is stating that if they do decide to go with Dylan White, it'll likely be sometime in May or June. But like all things in boxing, this news is fluid. So don't go getting comfortable with the idea that Dillian White is the next guy that Anthony Joshua is going to be fighting, because along with all these other comments, Eddie Hearn stated that the Jarrell Miller fight that is to take place in Madison Square Garden, that potential fight is actually very close. Now, Mike Kopinger, a correspondent for Fox Sports, the LA Times, and Ring Magazine, he just tweeted not too long ago that that fight is very close, that both sides, both Jarrell Miller and Anthony Joshua, have agreed to terms, and the only thing that's left now is to iron out a few small details, but nothing so major that could actually get in the way of the fight. In other words, if you want to go off of what Mike Kopinger's saying, he's saying that that fight is all but done. And as it was previously reported, this fight with Jarrell Miller would be taking place at Madison Square Garden in New York City. This would be Anthony Joshua's maiden voyage into the U.S. market, his United States debut. It's a matter of some importance. It is of some importance. You can imagine that as Anthony Joshua decides to go ahead and make his U.S. debut, they want this event to be a success. They want to be able to make a splash.
Of course.
Thus, the likelihood of him facing Jarrell Miller in the United States, well, that would likely take place, sometime after April, because they want to have time to promote the event. They don't want to just have him go there and have a fight. They want to have time to build a buzz, to get attention, to garner attention for the event so that the event is a hit. You don't want a guy who's a real big deal in his own backyard to come over here to America and seem like small potatoes. You want time to build that thing up. You want time to promote it. Thus, it's likely that that fight would take place in either May or June. At this point, what it's really a question of who agrees to what first. If it just so happens to be Dillian White, then the best place for a Dillian White fight would have to be in the UK because he already has a profile there. So obviously, a fight between Anthony Joshua and Dillian White will get you more money in the UK's domestic market than trying to bring that kind of fight over here. Over here, that fight is really small potatoes. Whereas with Jarrell Miller,
Small potatoes, bud.
it's a calculated financial risk. You see, they could have just as easily flown Jarrell Miller over there to the UK where Anthony Joshua already has a profile. But if Jarrell Miller ends up saying yes first,
They will enterprise.
they're using that opportunity against an American heavyweight who knows how to talk some shit. They're using that as an opportunity to crack into the U.S. market. And it's a calculated risk because, look, if it were just about scoring yet another payday, yet another multi-million-dollar payday, then they could just as easily fly Jarrell Miller over there to the UK and stage the fight over there and let Anthony Joshua's fans fans carry the pay-per-view. But they're using Jarrell Miller if he decides to say yes first. They're using him as a window of opportunity
to build further,
to expand upon what Anthony Joshua has already built domestically. They already know what he's capable of in the UK's domestic market. But against an American heavyweight who's got a mouth, who knows how to talk some shit, they want to use that opportunity to see what they can do over here in this market.
it's like an experiment.
Essentially, the biggest fights that Anthony Joshua could have are not available right now. The two guys that could give him the biggest bang for his buck, they rather fight each other. Whatever, make of it what you will. So Anthony Joshua and his handlers appear to be using this as an opportunity to expand upon what they have already built. And I would say that is probably the most constructive use of your time and your energies. You could have another fight over there in the UK. Why not? The money's over there anyway. But rather than doing that, they're using this as an opportunity for progress. Very easy situation to read, very easy situation to understand that at this point, they've already had so much success domestically that they are afforded the luxury of experimentation. They are afforded the luxury of expanding upon what they have already built because at minimum, they know that Anthony Joshua can always go back and fight domestically in the UK and recoup whatever losses he suffers abroad.
If any.
If he suffers any losses, you know?
Fiscally,
big if.
financially.
If they promote it the right way, maybe it'll be a success. Maybe he makes a big splash. I'll tell you the truth that the American market is a very unstable market, and the fans here are very fickle. But this is what these guys want to do. They figure that they've had so much success already, they can afford the luxury of expansion. So now really it's just a question of which one of these two guys that don't like each other and don't have a high opinion of each other, who are also competing for the same fight with the same guy. They're both competing for the same shot. Now it's just a question of who agrees to terms first, and based on who it is, that will determine where it is. And I guess now is about as good a time as any to discuss the rematch between Eleider Alvarez, newly crowned WBO champion Eleider Alvarez, and Sergey Kovalev. You know, Sergey's name has been making a lot of headlines as of late, but not for the right reasons. He's got a potential 4-year sentence in prison hanging over his head ahead of this fight with Eleider Alvarez, ahead of this rematch. To top it all off, you know, since leaving John David Jackson, this guy has bounced from trainer to trainer at least 2 times. You have to wonder how conducive is that towards the progress of Sergey Kovalev and the rebuilding process that it would take to get him back to his winning ways. He went from John David Jackson to Abror to, you know, that guy's just got a lot of fucking letters in his name. The Russian guy, let's put it that way. I can't pronounce his name. He went from John David Jackson to the Russian guy, and now he's with Buddy McGirt. And something that's kind of essential to the rebuilding process is synergy. Having a rapport with the person so that you have that to build upon. Being in a new environment, taking you out of old habits, but a rapport. A rapport that you can feed off of. That maybe you're getting something now that you weren't getting before, and I'm not quite sure that that's what's even going on with Sergey Kovalev, because you just bounced from one trainer to another trainer. You know that Buddy McGirt, he says that he didn't even watch the footage of Sergey Kovalev's knockout to Eleider Alvarez. Yeah, he didn't even watch the film on that. So you do gotta wonder, what kind of Sergey Kovalev are we even getting? Now, I'm not doubting that the fight itself and its aesthetic will be entertaining. What I'm getting at is, Sergey Kovalev doesn't appear to me to be a guy that can get back to his winning ways. And if he shocks the world this weekend, then so be it. But given everything that's been going on with this guy as of late,
Not encouraging.
it just doesn't seem to be conducive towards progress. It doesn't seem like he's in a place where he's going to come out on top. You know, for a while, Sergey Kovalev had the reputation of being quite stubborn, that this is a guy that really doesn't take instruction very well, and this was rumored to have gone on for quite some time between him and John David Jackson. And he went from John David Jackson to the Russian guy, but that relationship didn't last very long. You know, how long was that partnership? What, 2 fights? And now he's with Buddy McGirt. And the question is, what are we supposed to believe? That now he's getting the kick in the ass that he wasn't getting before from Buddy McGirt? I mean, the question I'm asking myself, and the question I think you guys should ask yourselves is, do you really feel in your heart of hearts that Sergey Kovalev will do better in the rematch? And if so, how much money would you actually bet on that? Because based on how much money you're willing to bet, based on how much money you'd be willing to lose if you were wrong, that's what really tells the story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you the truth that I'm going to be tuning in with a very curious eye. I'm going to be tuning in, waiting to see what happens. But at minimum, I'll say that the conservative prediction is Elater Alvarez by way of knockout after the mid-rounds, by way of knockout or technical knockout. And the reason I call it the conservative prediction is that with all the topsy-turvy shit that's going on in Sergey Kovalev's life right now, I'm not sure he's in a place where he's really focused on the right things and where he can rebuild his career. You got this broad saying that you punched her in the face and she intends to sue you for $8 million. And there's a 4-year jail sentence hanging over your head, and as if that isn't bad enough, the last year or two, you've been bouncing from trainer to trainer, and all that really conveys to me is the inability to develop a rapport that would be conducive towards a comeback. So look, if you guys want to pick Sergey Kovalev to win that fight, go right on ahead. I'm not going to knock you. I'm not going to stop you. I'm just saying that for me, and from where I'm sitting, Sergey Kovalev doesn't appear to be a guy who's in a good place right now. And, you know, the first fight, it looked like how it looked. I mean, is it a coincidence that the first credible threat that Sergey Kovalev faced since losing to Andre Ward 2 times, is it a coincidence that the first credible threat he faced was able to unseat him, was able to upset him? You know, you saw the McCalkin fight, and McCalkin's okay, solid guy, but he's got no punch. And you know, with the Shabransky fight, yeah, that's a guy who can punch, but his boxing really isn't the best. So you saw the area and the angle of opportunity for Sergey Kovalev to bounce back with those guys. But as soon as he faced someone who was a more complete fighter, who was also experienced in the weight class, because most people don't realize Elater Alvarez has been around the block. You know, as soon as Sergey faced a solid guy, the first credible threat since losing to Andre Ward, is it really a coincidence that he lost those fights? I mean, for a lot of people, and they'll tell you, the air of the quote-unquote crusher, that air, that bubble, has already been bursted, and now he's just a ghost, a husk of who he used to be to the weight class. So, you know, the conservative prediction, without dissecting the nuts and bolts of the first fight and just going off of current events, the conservative prediction would have to be, at least for me, Elater Alvarez by way of knockout or technical knockout after the mid-rounds. I mean, if anything, in all likelihood, maybe Elater gets it done even sooner. Maybe he improves upon what he already did in the first fight because he's more familiar with his guy. You know that Elater's flying high right now. You know, he's finally getting the opportunity to enjoy being a world titleist, a world champion, an opportunity that he was deprived of for some time. And I'm just not sold that he's going to let that slip away to a guy who's on as such unstable footing right now as Sergey Kovalev. So, you know, I'm going with Alvarez. It might seem like a foregone conclusion, but, you know, that's who I'm going with.